The rope tightened around her neck when fate spared her by a thread. Cast into darkness, it was in the arms of a silent stranger that she found breath and healing. Subscribe to the channel and see how from injustice can be born a strength that no one will dare challenge. On that starless night, the silence of the backlands was broken by screams echoing through the village of Serra das Almas. The inhabitants, who before only whispered on dusty corners and narrow sidewalks, now gained courage in the collective embrace of the mob. The central square, illuminated by improvised torches, seethed with accusations. Lourdes, the widow of Zé Crispim, was on her knees, hands tied behind her back, while the cry trapped in her throat struggled not to escape. Mourning still marked her face, in the deep circles under her eyes and the weary countenance of one who buried her husband less than 3 moons ago. "Wretched woman!" someone shouted. "Barely has her husband's body gone cold, and she's already receiving visitors in the dead of night," accused another. In that forgotten piece of the Pernambuco backlands, between the Caatinga and the intermittent river, a rumor was enough to light the bonfire of hatred. They said the widow smiled too much at the store owner, that she accepted gifts, that she disrespected the memory of the deceased. No one asked. No one wanted to know the truth. Lourdes searched among the familiar faces for one that might see her as a person, as the same woman who shared flour and prayers during the most severe droughts. She found none. The voice of Colonel Jeremias sealed her fate. "A woman without honor doesn't deserve to live among us. Tie her to the jatoba tree." The cry that followed was almost a collective howl of approval. They dragged Lourdes across the dirt ground to the century-old jatoba that reigned in the center of the square. Her thin legs left a trail in the dust, while her black hair, now disheveled, partially covered her face. "Please," she whispered, "my boy, my Twangho, he needs me." But her words were swallowed by the tumult. Someone had already thrown the rope over the strongest branch of the tree. Calloused hands adjusted the noose around Lourdes' thin neck. She closed her eyes. She thought of her small son, who had departed with fevers 3 months before her husband. They hadn't let her keep his little bones as she wanted. "Bury him quickly, woman. Disease doesn't wait," they said. And she obeyed, without time to say goodbye properly, without being able to light candles for the necessary time. The pain of Twangho's departure was still bleeding when Zé Crispim also left, bitten by a snake while working in the fields. 2 mornings, one on top of the other, like stones too heavy to carry. "Finish this quickly," ordered the colonel, impatient. A violent kick to the crate that served as support for Lourdes' feet. The body fell. The dry snap of the rope echoed in the square. But it wasn't the snap of the neck breaking, it was the rope. Old, worn by time, it broke before it could fulfill its final purpose. Lourdes plummeted like a sack of bones onto the hard earth. Someone murmured that it was a bad omen. "The wretch has dealings with the evil one," whispered a voice. "It's divine punishment not to finish the job," concluded another. A disconcerting silence took over the square. Colonel Jeremias approached, prodded the body with the tip of his boot. "Is she really dead?" he asked, his voice betraying a hint of fear. Nobody answered. "Throw the body in the Caatinga, for the vultures to finish it." 4 men carried Lourdes by the legs and arms like carrying an unwanted burden. They headed beyond the last houses, where the backlands opened into its endless aridity. They threw the body among the mandacaru and zik cacti, on stones that cut the skin like razors. They thought she was dead, but she wasn't. When the men returned to the village, commenting in low voices that they would never see the wretched widow again, Lourdes was breathing weakly, very weakly, like an injured little bird. The sky began to lighten on the horizon, painting the Caatinga in orange tones. 2 days without rain had left the ground cracked, the thorny plants even more aggressive, like sentinels protecting the backlands. That's when Irani appeared. He had gone out early to gather herbs near the spring that still kept a trickle of water, even in the drought. He lived alone in a mud house hidden among hills, far from the village community. Son of a Quilombola and an indigenous woman, he carried in his dark skin and marked features the heritage of 2 persecuted peoples. He knew every medicinal plant, every healing root, every prayer that relieved ailments of body and soul. When he saw Lourdes' body among the mandacaru cacti, he approached without fear. In that piece of land, death was a daily companion, in droughts, in diseases, in snake bites. He touched the pale face with his rough fingers, calloused from preparing ointments and teas. He felt the almost imperceptible breathing. The eyes closed, the neck marked by the rope, the hands still tied. He didn't hesitate. He cut the ropes with the knife he always carried at his waist. He lifted Lourdes' light body carefully, like holding something between life and absence. The first lights of day illuminated the path he knew like the lines of his own hand. He took her to the hidden spring among rocks, where water sprouted warm from the earth, like a blessing forgotten by the gods. There, he immersed the bruised body in the warm waters, washing the dust and blood carefully, like washing a rare leaf. He applied a paste of crushed herbs to the wounds on her neck, intoned ancient songs he had learned from his indigenous mother before she went to the world of ancestors. He carried Lourdes to his mud house with the palm roof and packed earth floor. He laid her on a clean mat, covered her with a cotton cloth dyed with annatto. For days she didn't open her eyes, but her body responded. Her fingers contracted when he offered water with native bee honey. Her breathing adjusted, growing stronger with each sunrise. Irani continued caring, with the patience of one who learned that healing has its own time. Irani's house was simple but welcoming. On the clay walls hung bunches of drying herbs. On rustic wooden shelves, clay pots stored seeds, roots, barks, leaves, his treasure, his sustenance, his mission. In the center of the single room, a small fire kept alive the flame that heated teas and fumigations. In the corner, a simple altar gathered Catholic saints. Gourds with holy water, river shells, colorful feathers, and a necklace made of Brazil wood seeds that had belonged to his grandmother. When Lourdes finally opened her eyes, she saw the palm roof and smelled the sweet smoke. She tried to move, but her aching body didn't fully obey. That's when she noticed his presence. Sitting next to the mat, braiding a necklace of leucaena seeds, was a man she had never seen before. Skin dark as a moonless night, curly hair tied back, deep eyes that seemed to hold ancient secrets. Upon noticing she had awakened, he showed no surprise. He just offered a gourd with fresh water, as if to say, "You're back." Where Lourdes' voice came out hoarse, almost unrecognizable. "Water first," he responded, with a deep and calm voice. "Talk later." In the following weeks, Lourdes learned silence, the language of herbs, of gestures, of the wind among the leaves of the umbuzeiro trees. Irani spoke little, but each word had weight and meaning. He taught her the names of plants that healed, showed her how to prepare poultices for the wounds still healing on her neck. He didn't ask about what had happened, and she didn't speak. There was a silent understanding between them, as if words were unnecessary to name human cruelty. As she regained her strength, Lourdes began to help with daily tasks. Her hands, previously dedicated to household work in the village, now learned to harvest herbs without hurting them, to prepare tinctures, to distinguish the song of birds that announced rain or drought. "Why did you save me?" she asked one afternoon, while they were separating arowana seeds. Irani continued his work for a few moments before answering. "My mother used to say, whoever saves one life saves the entire world." Silence. "Besides," he added after a long pause, "I also know what it's like to be thrown away by people who think they're better." One night, sitting at the door of the house, observing the stars that dotted the backland sky like diamonds scattered on dark velvet, Lourdes finally spoke about Tuanho. She told about the 5-year-old boy with bright eyes and easy laughter, who loved stories of jaguar hunters and dreamed of seeing the sea. The fever came quickly, like a storm in the backlands. 3 days and he was gone, she said, her voice broken by the pain that never completely healed. They buried my boy in a hurry. They didn't let me properly mourn him, didn't let me cry for the necessary time. They said disease doesn't wait, that it was dangerous, that I needed to be strong. A solitary tear ran down her face, marked by the sun. And then my husband also departed. Snakebite. And I was left alone, with 2 absences weighing on my chest. Irani listened in silence, respecting the pain that overflowed in each word. When she finished, he stood up and went into the house. He returned with a small cloth bundle. He opened it carefully, revealing a necklace made of red and black seeds. "Crab's eye," he explained. "Protects the wearer. Keeps good memories, drives away the bad ones." He placed the necklace in Lourdes' hands. "For your boy. For when you go to say goodbye properly." That night Lourdes cried all the tears she had repressed. She cried for her son, for her husband, for herself. And Irani stayed by her side, without touching, without speaking, just being a presence that embraces pain without judgment. The next morning, something had changed. Lourdes woke up with a crystalline certainty, like spring water. She needed to go back. She needed to recover Twanho's bones, give him the farewell he deserved. "I'm going back to the village," she announced, while they ate the corn porridge prepared by Irani. He observed her for a long moment before responding. "They think you're dead, and in a way I died. The Lourdes they knew no longer exists." She touched her neck where the marks of the rope remained visible. "But I need my son. I need his bones." Irani nodded. He understood without needing further explanations. "When tomorrow?" "At first light. I'll go with you." No, she was firm. "This I need to do alone." He didn't insist. But that afternoon, while Lourdes rested, Irani prepared a special mixture of herbs. He ground Jurema seeds, Angico bark, Manakar roots. He added Mandasaya bee honey and piqui oil, a sacred ointment, used by the ancients for protection in times of danger. In the evening, he gave Lourdes a small clay pot containing the mixture. "Apply it to your body before leaving. It will make you strong like the Mandakaru, which survives where everything else gives up." Lourdes accepted the gift with a look of gratitude that dispensed with words. That night was one of preparation. Irani taught her an ancient prayer, transmitted for generations among his people, to open paths and close dangers. Lourdes repeated the words several times until they flowed naturally from her lips. Before retiring, they shared a bitter Jurema tea, which, according to Irani, would allow ancestral spirits to guide them through dreams. They fell asleep side by side on the mat, without touching, united only by their measured breathing and the purpose that awaited them with the new day. And while Lourdes slept, Irani remained awake for some time, observing her face illuminated by the faint glow of the embers that still burned. He knew he couldn't let her face alone what was to come. Even if she didn't want his company, he would follow her steps like a protective shadow, invisible but present, because something within him, as ancient as the stones of the backlands, said that their destinies were intertwined like the roots of the umbuzero trees that share water in the depths of the dry earth. Dawn still held remnants of night when Lourdes awoke. On the horizon, a thin line of light announced the day to come. She sat on the mat, breathed deeply, feeling the fresh air fill her lungs. She had spent almost 2 months in Irani's house, time enough for the wounds of the body to heal, although those of the soul still silently bled. She took the small pot of ointment prepared by Irani and, following his instructions, applied the mixture to her entire body. The strong smell of herbs impregnated her skin, transmitting a sensation of strength and protection. She put on the only dress she possessed, the same one she wore on the day she was dragged to the Jatoba, now clean and mended by Irani's skillful hands. She braided her hair in the way he had taught her, firm and close to her head. Around her neck she placed the crab's eye necklace, the one she had kept for Twanho. "I'll lend this to you, my son," she whispered. "Just until I find you." When she left the house, Irani was already standing, silent as always. He handed her a package of banana leaves. "Food for the journey," he said simply. Lourdes accepted, feeling in her throat the knot of unspoken words. How to thank someone who returned not only her life, but also her dignity. "I'll be back before sunset," she promised. "If you don't return by the time the moon appears, I'll come looking for you," he replied, in a tone that admitted no contestation. Lourdes nodded and departed, following the trail that snaked between Mandakaru and Zik cacti. The sun was beginning to rise, casting elongated shadows on the dry ground. She walked with firm steps, mentally repeating the prayer that Irani had taught her. She felt strangely calm, as if an ancestral force guided her steps. What would the inhabitants of Serra das Almas say when they saw her? Would they think she was a ghost, a vengeful spirit returning to torment them? The idea almost made her smile, a bitter smile without joy. But it wasn't vengeance she sought. It was just the right to recover what was hers, her son's bones, to finally give him the rest he deserved. Lourdes didn't know, but Irani was following her at a distance. He moved like a shadow among the twisted bushes of the Caatinga, silent as a jaguar on the hunt. He had promised himself he would not interfere unless it was absolutely necessary. This journey was hers, this courage belonged to her, but he would be nearby, vigilant. Upon sighting the first houses of the village, Lourdes felt her heart accelerate. She paused for a moment, breathing deeply to calm her pulse. The sun was already high, announcing noon. The dirt streets seemed deserted, the siesta hour when heat drove even the dogs to the shade of the porches. Perfect. She could reach the small cemetery without being noticed, or so she hoped. She skirted the more distant houses, avoiding the central square where the Jatobah stood as a silent witness to her near departure. The cemetery was at the limits of the village, surrounded by a small wall of stacked stones. There was no gate. Death was too frequent a visitor to deserve locks. Lourdes entered with determined steps. She knew well the path to Tuanho's tomb. So many times she had walked that trail between crude crosses and improvised tombstones. The boy's tomb was small, marked only by a wooden cross where his name had been carefully carved by Zay Crispim. Beside it now lay her husband, under another similar cross. For a moment, Lourdes felt the weight of their absence, but the time for laments had passed. She knelt beside her son's grave and began to dig with her hands. The earth was hard, resistant. Her nails broke, her fingers bled, but she continued, determined. So absorbed was she in her task that she didn't notice the approaching footsteps. My God in heaven! It's Lourdes's soul! The sharp cry broke the silence of the cemetery. Lourdes turned abruptly. Before her, with wide eyes and hand over her mouth, stood Donna Severina, the village healer, a woman respected by all, known for her strong prayers and herbs that cured everything from snake bites to the evil eye. I'm not a soul, Donna Severina, Lourdes replied with a firm voice. I'm flesh and blood, like you. The old healer approached cautiously, her black eyes scrutinizing every detail of Lourdes, as if seeking to confirm her words. But we buried you. They threw you in the Caatinga after... Her voice failed. After they tried to hang me, completed Lourdes, touching the marks on her neck. The rope broke. And I survived. Donna Severina made the sign of the cross, murmuring a prayer. Then it was a miracle. Our Lady protected you. It was a man who saved me, her healer who lives beyond the hills. Donna Severina widened her eyes. The son of the indigenous woman and the Quilombola? The one they call a sorcerer? The very same. And he's not a sorcerer. He's a man of knowledge and kindness. Lourdes turned again to the grave, resuming her task. I came to get my son. I won't leave without him. The healer observed in silence for a few moments. Then, to Lourdes' surprise, she knelt beside her and began to help her dig. What are you doing, Donna Severina? What I should have done a long time ago, replied the old woman with determination in her tired eyes. Helping a mother care for her son. I should have defended you that day, Lourdes. I should have shouted that it was injustice. But I remained silent like everyone else. Her wrinkled hands joined Lourdes's in the hard earth. Now I can correct my mistake. The two women dug together in respectful silence. The sun was slowly sliding across the sky, announcing that afternoon was advancing. That's when they heard voices approaching. I saw, Colonel. I swear by the light of my eyes. It's Lourdes's soul come back to take revenge. It was Zephyr's strident voice, known for her chatter and gossip. In a few moments, a group of men surrounded the cemetery, led by Colonel Jeremias. Upon seeing her, the man turned pale as if he had seen a ghost. Mercy! He exclaimed, backing up a step. It's the hanged woman. Lourdes rose slowly, facing the group. There was something different about her, something that went beyond the physical marks, a presence, a strength that emanated from every gesture, every look. She was no longer the fragile widow they had dragged to the Jatobah. She was another woman, one who had known pain and transformed it into power. I'm not a wandering soul, Colonel, she said, with a clear voice that echoed through the silent cemetery. I'm alive despite the rope you ordered put around my neck. Her eyes, once lowered and submissive, now directly faced the Colonel's. Eyes of Mandakaru, someone whispered in the crowd that was beginning to form. Firm and full of thorns. Colonel Jeremias, recovering from the initial shock, advanced a step. What do you think you're doing, woman? Desecrating graves? That's a crime. I'm taking my son, replied Lourdes without being intimidated. The one you didn't let me properly mourn. The one you buried in a hurry as if he were an animal. Donna Severina also stood up, placing herself beside Lourdes. She has that right, Colonel. Every Christian deserves to be mourned by their own. We took that from her. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some agreed, others protested. This is witchcraft, someone shouted. She didn't die because she has dealings with the devil, accused another. Enough! Donna Severina's voice rose above the tumult. Despite her advanced age, the healer still commanded respect in the village. You accused this woman without evidence. You tried to kill her without a trial, and now you want to prevent her from caring for her own son. Her eyes surveyed the familiar faces. What kind of Christians are we, who do this to our brothers and sisters? An uncomfortable silence followed her words. That's when the group opened up, giving passage to a figure approaching with firm steps. Irani. Lourdes felt her heart accelerate. He had promised to stay away, to only observe, but there he was facing the entire village for her. His presence caused immediate commotion. The sorcerer! Exclaimed a woman, making the sign of the cross. It's he who bewitched the widow, accused a man. Irani ignored the comments, walking until he stood beside Lourdes. He didn't say a word, but his fixed gaze on the colonel's eyes spoke volumes. This man saved me, said Lourdes with a firm voice. He found me almost lifeless, thrown among the stones where you left me. He healed me with his herbs and his knowledge. Her eyes surveyed the crowd. While you condemned me without evidence, he welcomed me without questions. Colonel Jeremias, visibly uncomfortable with the situation, cleared his throat before speaking. That changes nothing. You can't simply dig up a body. There are rules, woman. That's when Father Anselmo, who had been observing everything from a distance, finally spoke up. A middle-aged man, he had arrived in the village only 3 years ago, coming from Recife. He had never fully adapted to the rigid customs of the place, but was respected for his kindness and wisdom. Actually, Colonel, he said, approaching, there is no canonical or civil law that prevents a mother from transferring the mortal remains of her son to another burial place. He looked at Lourdes with compassion. As long as it is done with due respect, it is a right we cannot deny. Colonel Jeremias faced the priest with poorly disguised irritation. You're taking the side of a grieving mother, completed the priest with firmness. Yes, I am, and I suggest we all reflect on what happened here. A trial without evidence, a condemnation without defense. His gaze swept across the group. This is not how Christians should act. The priest's words fell like stones in still water, creating waves that spread among those present. Some lowered their eyes, ashamed. Others still maintained hostile expressions. Colonel Jeremias, realizing he was losing control of the situation, tried one last attack. And what if she's lying? What if she really did betray her husband, as they say? Lourdes, who until then had maintained her composure, took a step toward the colonel. You know very well that was never true, she said, in a low but audible voice for all. You know because it was you who spread the rumor, after I refused your visits when my husband traveled to sell at the Caruaru fair. A shocked murmur ran through the crowd. The colonel turned pale. You're crazy, woman. How dare you? I dare because I have nothing more to lose, replied Lourdes. Your revenge has already taken almost everything from me. Now I just want my son. Donna Severina stepped forward. Is it true, Colonel? Was it you who spread those stories? The man, cornered, looked around, seeking support that he didn't find. Even his henchman seemed uncertain, avoiding his gaze. This is absurd, he stammered. You're going to believe a woman who came back from death. This is the devil's work? Or perhaps it's divine justice, intervened Father Anselmo. A chance to correct a terrible mistake. He turned to the crowd. Who here witnessed with their own eyes any improper conduct by this woman? Who can affirm before God that she betrayed her husband? The silence that followed was answer enough. Not even Zephyr, always ready to feed gossip, dared to speak up. The priest nodded, as if confirming something he already knew. As I thought. We condemned without evidence, based only on rumors. He turned to Lourdes. In the name of this community, I ask forgiveness for the harm done to you. Colonel Jeremias, seeing his authority crumble, tried one last card. And what about him? He pointed to Irani. Everyone knows he's a sorcerer, that he does work for the evil one. Irani, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke. His deep and profound voice made everyone pay attention. I'm not a sorcerer, Colonel. I'm a healer. I know the plants that cure and those that kill. I know the prayers that open paths and those that close wounds." His dark eyes fixed on the colonel's. "If I served evil, as you say, I would have let this woman die. Or worse, I would have come to take revenge on those who tried to kill her." A shiver ran through the crowd. "But I didn't come for that. I came to help her recover what is rightfully hers, the son she couldn't properly mourn." Irani looked at the priest. "In my tradition, the dead need to be properly honored to find peace. I imagine in yours it's similar." Father Anselmo nodded. "Yes, it's similar." He turned to Lourdes. "You have my permission and blessing to take your son. And I suggest that everyone here help, as a form of reparation for the harm caused." For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, João Batista, the blacksmith, stepped forward. "I have a shovel at home. I'll get it." Others followed his example. In a few minutes, a small procession formed heading to the cemetery. Men brought tools to dig. Women carried flowers hastily picked from gardens. Children observed in respectful silence. Colonel Jeremias, isolated and ignored, walked away without a word. Under Father Anselmo's attentive gaze and Donna Severina's gentle guidance, the strongest men of the village dug until they found the small wooden coffin. Carefully, they removed it from the earth and placed it at Lourdes's feet. It was stained by the soil's moisture, but still intact. Gentle hands cleaned the earth that covered it, while female voices intoned ancient prayers. Someone brought a clean sheet to wrap it. Lourdes knelt before the coffin, touching it with trembling hands. Silent tears streamed down her face. "My boy," she whispered, "let's go home." Irani approached, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "Are you ready?" She nodded. Almost. She stood up and faced the village inhabitants who were observing her in silence. "I hold no hatred for what you did," she said with a clear voice. "Pain has taught enough to all of us." Her eyes rested on each face. "But never forget what happened here, so that other women don't suffer the same fate." She turned to Donna Severina, holding her wrinkled hands. "Thank you for standing by my side when I needed it." The old healer squeezed her hands. "Go in peace, daughter, and come back whenever you want. You will always have a place here." "My place is elsewhere now," replied Lourdes with a small smile. "By the warm waters and the healing herbs." She looked at Irani, who was watching her with attentive eyes. "Beside the one who taught me there was still life after pain." Father Anselmo blessed the coffin and those present. Then, with the help of 4 men, the small coffin was placed on a cart lent by Manuel from the store, the same one who, according to rumors, had received too many smiles from Lourdes. The man with lowered head murmured an apology that she accepted with a silent nod. The sun was already beginning to set when Lourdes and Irani departed, taking with them the small coffin. The cart moved slowly along the dirt road, leaving behind the village of Serra das Almas. Some residents accompanied the departure to the limits of the settlement, like a silent procession of farewell and atonement. Lourdes didn't look back. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the sun painted the sky orange and red, announcing the end of one day and the promise of another dawn. They arrived at Irani's house when the first stars already dotted the dark sky. Carefully, they took the coffin near the spring of warm waters. There, under the silver light of the moon, they performed a ritual that blended traditions, the Catholic prayers that Lourdes had known since childhood, and the ancient songs Irani had inherited from his ancestors. They buried Tuanho under a small umbu tree, whose deep roots sought water even in the most severe droughts. "Like life, which insists on continuing," explained Irani, as he planted flower seedlings around the grave. Lourdes placed on the mound of fresh earth the crab's eye necklace she had carried with her. "To protect you, my son," she said with a voice choked by emotion, "so that you find peace wherever you are." When they finished, they sat side by side, observing the stars that shone like attentive eyes in the cloudless sky. The silence between them was comfortable, as if words were unnecessary to express what they felt. It was Irani who finally broke the silence. "You can stay if you want," he said without looking at her directly. "There is space here, and enough work for 2 hands." Lourdes observed his profile outlined against the night. The man who had saved her, who had returned not only her life but also her dignity, who had never asked for anything in return. "I will stay," she replied simply, "not out of gratitude or debt, but because here I found what I thought I had lost forever." Irani turned to her with a silent question in his eyes. "Hope," explained Lourdes, and the chance to build something new on the ruins of what was destroyed. She extended her hand, lightly touching his rough fingers. "If you'll accept me, not as the widow or the hanged woman, but as the woman I am now." Irani intertwined his fingers with hers. He said nothing, but his gaze spoke of promises that didn't need words to be made. In the weeks that followed, the news spread through the backlands. They spoke of the woman who had returned from death, who had eyes of Mandakaru, firm, strong, capable of seeing through appearances. It was said that she lived with the healer beyond the hills, and that together they attended to those who needed healing for body and soul. The first to seek them were the most desperate, those whom the medicine of doctors from the big city had already abandoned. Then came others brought by hope or curiosity. Lourdes learned quickly. Her hands, previously occupied with household tasks, now knew the secrets of plants, the power of ancient prayers, the strength of waters that sprang from the earth. And alongside Irani, she built a life she had never imagined for herself. Not a perfect life or one without pain. The backlands were too harsh for easy promises. But a life of purpose, of meaning, of deep connection with the earth and with the silent man who had chosen her without words. When the rains finally came, after months of relentless drought, the small umbu tree over Twinho's grave blossomed, covering itself with green leaves and delicate flowers. Lourdes saw in this a sign, life stubbornly sprouting even in the most unlikely places, as she herself had done. On full moon nights, when the backlands covered themselves in liquid silver, Lourdes and Irani sat at the door of the mud house, now expanded to shelter the family they formed. And although they had no children of their own, they were parents to many, to the children brought to be healed, to the young people who came to learn the secrets of herbs, to the old who sought relief for ancient pains. And so, the woman who was hanged, and the man whom everyone feared for being different became legend in the backlands. Not as a horror story to frighten disobedient children, but as a reminder that life finds paths even when all doors seem closed. That forgiveness, although difficult, is more powerful than revenge, and that love, true and silent like the deep roots of the Umbuzero, can flourish even in the most arid soil, transforming scars into marks of resistance and pain into wisdom. If this narrative touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that reveal the strength of the human spirit